My brother embarrassed me on my parents' anniversary, so I ruined his life. It was a crisp October evening when my parents celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. The event was held at a modest banquet hall in our hometown, adorned with autumnal decorations and the soft glow of fairy lights. Friends and family gathered, exchanging stories and laughter, creating an atmosphere of warmth and nostalgia. As the evening progressed, my older brother, Nathan, took the stage to propose a toast. With a charismatic smile, he raised his glass and said, "Here's to Mom and Dad, for their unwavering patience, especially with their second son, the one who left medical school and still resides in their basement at 35. The room erupted in laughter. Some guests glanced at me, chuckling, while others tried to stifle their amusement. I forced a smile, my hands trembling beneath the tablecloth. The sting of embarrassment was sharp, but I remained silent, not wanting to cause a scene. For the next 2 months, I carried that moment with me, the humiliation simmering beneath the surface. Then, one morning, my phone buzzed incessantly. Curious, I checked the messages and found a flurry of notifications. Something was unfolding. I sat down, hands still shaking, and began to piece together the events that had led to this point. 2 months prior, I had reluctantly attended my parents' anniversary party. Despite my reservations, I knew it was a significant milestone. My mother, Margaret, had spent weeks planning every detail, ensuring everything was perfect. My father, George, as always, supported her endeavors quietly. I had considered skipping the event, citing a fictitious illness, but ultimately decided to attend. After all, 40 years of marriage was no small feat, and beneath my insecurities, I did love my parents. For context, I'm 35 years old, living in my parents' basement after leaving medical school 7 years ago due to a severe mental health crisis. Since then, I've been working at a local hardware store, trying to find my footing. It's not the life I envisioned, but it's honest work. Nathan, on the other hand, is the epitome of success, a financial advisor with his own firm, a beautiful home, a picture-perfect family, and a social media presence that showcases their idyllic life. His wife, Isabella, is a lifestyle influencer, and their 2 children are already being groomed for Ivy League schools. At the party, I kept to myself, nursing a drink and engaging in small talk with my cousin, who always treated me kindly. My mother occasionally glanced my way, her expression a mix of relief and apprehension. After dinner, my father gave a heartfelt speech about love and partnership, bringing my mother to tears. Then Nathan stood up, delivering his infamous toast that left me mortified. The laughter that followed felt like a dagger, each chuckle reinforcing my sense of failure. That night, I left the party early, driving home alone. In the solitude of my car, I screamed a raw, primal release of pent-up frustration. Tears followed, a torrent of emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. This wasn't the first time Nathan had belittled me. Throughout our lives, he had a knack for highlighting my shortcomings, often under the guise of humor. Our parents, while loving, never intervened, offering me sympathetic smiles but little else. The next morning, I resolved to make a change, not just for myself, but to confront the dynamics that had plagued our family for years. I began to observe, to listen, and to gather information, setting in motion a plan that would alter the course of our lives. In the days following the anniversary party, something inside me shifted. I'd spent so many years quietly enduring the label of the one who didn't live up to his potential, I'd started to believe it myself. But now there was a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, resolve. I didn't act immediately. I'm not impulsive. I let things simmer, pretending everything was normal. I went to work at the hardware store, smiled politely at customers, came home, helped Dad clean the gutters, and took care of small chores around the house. On the surface, I was the same person I'd been for years. But privately, I was taking note of everything. That first weekend after the party, I went to our usual Sunday brunch, a long-standing tradition in the Dunlow household. My mother insisted on it. Fresh fruit, pancakes, strong coffee, polite conversation. I almost bailed, like I had so many times before, but I needed to be there. I needed to watch Nathan in the daylight. I needed to understand what made him tick. That morning, while grabbing orange juice from the fridge, I overheard a conversation on the back deck between Nathan and his business partner, Malcolm. They didn't know I was within earshot, and the kitchen window was cracked just enough for me to hear their voices. "The Whitman portfolio is going to be a problem if she brings in that auditor," Malcolm said. Nathan laughed. "Just stall. Push her meeting back until we clear the Dresden funds. After that, we'll be in the clear. Tell her I had a family emergency or something." Malcolm sounded nervous. "You think that'll buy us enough time?" 2 weeks. That's all we need. And if she insists on seeing the books, give her the usual, projected growth charts and long-term value forecasts. Most people can't tell the difference anyway. It didn't take a degree in finance to recognize how wrong it sounded. I wasn't an expert, but I knew enough to tell when someone was hiding something. I quietly took out my phone and started recording. They went on for 10 more minutes. Moving funds between accounts, delays, false reassurances. Everything felt carefully rehearsed, like they'd done it many times before. Back inside, Nathan greeted me with that same smirk he wore at the party. "Hey, there's the comeback kid," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "What, no hangover?" I smiled. Said nothing. My heart was pounding, but I nodded like everything was fine. I'd gotten good at pretending. Later that day, I went to a small coffee shop across town, the kind where no one knows your name and the Wi-Fi always works. I opened my old laptop, the same one I hadn't touched since leaving school, and started researching. What I found made my stomach turn. The things Nathan and Malcolm were doing? They weren't just unorthodox, they were unethical, and in some cases, potentially criminal. Using one client's funds to cover another's losses, misleading paperwork, unregistered account transfers. That night, I couldn't sleep. The more I looked, the more the pieces fell into place. Nathan wasn't just ambitious, he was cornered. Somewhere along the way, he'd stretched himself too thin, and instead of asking for help, he started covering it up. And that's when the idea began to take root, not revenge, exactly, but exposure. I didn't want to hurt him out of spite. I wanted him to feel what it was like to have your life picked apart by people who assumed they knew everything. In the days that followed, I played the role I knew best, the disappointment. Quiet, forgettable, invisible. I went to work, came home, nodded at dinner conversations, and spent my nights at the public library on a computer that wasn't traceable to me. I created folders, documents, backups. I watched webinars on investment regulations, downloaded PDFs from the SEC, read through advisor codes of ethics. And as I learned, I documented. But Nathan's financial secrets weren't his only ones. One afternoon, while helping Dad reset his email passwords, he'd forgotten them again. I came across a forwarded message from Nathan. The subject line was something vague, like Friday's meeting notes, but the email body mentioned reallocation of parental funds and a short-term coverage gap. I checked the account login logs and noticed something else, multiple access attempts from IPs not associated with my parents' location. Nathan wasn't just borrowing from clients, he was dipping into Mom and Dad's retirement savings, and they had no idea. That night, while I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, something hardened in me. This wasn't just about old rivalries or childhood wounds anymore. This was real. My parents could lose everything. And Nathan? He was still out there, smiling, taking pictures with his perfect family, getting applause for speeches at conferences, while I was down here in the basement like I didn't exist. One Sunday a few weeks later, Nathan came over for dinner, as he often did. He left his tablet on the coffee table while he went out back with Dad. It wasn't locked. I hesitated. But only for a second. On that device, I found direct messages to someone named Aaron. At first, I thought it was a client. But the tone quickly shifted, from professional to flirtatious to unmistakably inappropriate. I didn't read everything. I didn't need to. It was clear. Nathan, the family man, was having an affair. I forwarded a few screenshots to myself using a temporary email account, then logged out. Clean. No trace. It was at that point I understood something fundamental. I had power. For the first time in years, I had leverage. I didn't want to use it recklessly. I didn't want to destroy him. But I wasn't going to protect him either, not anymore. If no one else would hold him accountable, I would. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel ashamed of where I lived or what I hadn't become. I felt like someone with purpose, someone who could see clearly through the cracks in a perfect life. And that clarity? It was only the beginning. It had been a month since I started collecting everything. What began as a slow burn of quiet resentment had grown into a methodical project, one that required patience, discipline, and above all, invisibility. Fortunately, invisibility was something I had mastered long ago. By now, I had files. Digital folders. Binders tucked away in a box beneath my bed. Records of Nathan's mismanagement, notes from late-night research, emails that proved he had used our parents' retirement funds as a temporary patch for a much larger hole in his firm's books. I had printed out copies, just in case anything happened to my devices. It felt excessive, but then again, so was everything Nathan did. He had built a life on appearance. A curated image, successful advisor, devoted husband, attentive father, community volunteer. He was always the one shaking hands, remembered in church bulletins, giving talks at the Rotary Club. Meanwhile, I was the forgotten son. A cautionary tale told behind cupped hands. He was so bright, before the breakdown. They never said it with cruelty. Just quiet disappointment. But things were different now. I had stopped asking myself why he did what he did. I stopped wondering what made him twist the truth or bury his problems under piles of charm. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't trying to figure him out, I was preparing for consequences. There were 3 targets for my evidence: my parents, Nathan's clients and partners, and Isabella, his wife. All 3 deserved to know the truth, and I planned to make sure they did. But I had to do it carefully. First, I created 3 separate packets. The one for our parents included documentation of the transfers Nathan made from their accounts. I highlighted entries and included copies of the retirement account summaries, altered emails, and the real ones I'd intercepted from Dad's inbox after setting up quiet forwarding. The second was for a selection of Nathan's clients, not every single one, just the most prominent. People who had enough weight to make calls that mattered. Included were records of suspicious fund allocations, emails about delayed statements, and the audio clip I'd recorded of him and Malcolm on the back deck. The third was for Isabella. That one was the hardest to prepare. I didn't want to hurt her, not really. But she deserved to know. I left out the worst of it, kept it focused: screenshots of the messages between Nathan and Aaron, copies of his calendar entries labeled as strategy sessions that were actually dinners at a hotel restaurant 2 towns over. Once everything was organized, I needed a date. An occasion. Something that would ensure visibility and precision. Then, almost poetically, an opportunity fell into my lap. Nathan was set to receive a regional finance award at a formal ceremony recognition for excellence in ethical wealth stewardship. The irony wasn't lost on me. The entire family was invited. Isabella had posted about it online, with the usual #Layden caption: "So proud of this man. Hard work pays off. #success #gratitude. My parents couldn't stop talking about it. Mom even bought a new dress. Dad practiced his speech in the mirror. It was perfect. The week leading up to the ceremony, I created a backup plan. I told my parents I had a job interview in a neighboring city, a 2-hour drive, on the same day as Nathan's award. Something entry-level at a tech company, I said. They were thrilled. "See?" Mom beamed. "You're turning a corner." And maybe I was. But not in the way she meant. I spent that last week acting as if everything was normal. I helped Dad change a flat tire. Played board games with my niece and nephew when Nathan dropped them off during a school closure. I even offered to pick up dry cleaning for the big day. No one suspected a thing. The night before the event, I sat down with my parents. I didn't tell them everything. I only shared what they needed to know: that Nathan had been using their money without consent. That their accounts were not secure. I showed them the printed records. The dates. The balance discrepancies. Dad's face was unreadable. Mom started crying before I finished the first page. They didn't argue. They didn't defend him. Dad asked one question: "Are you sure?" I handed him a copy of one of the original bank statements, then the altered one Nathan had emailed them months later. "Compare the two," I said. He did. Then he folded the papers and stared at the floor. Mom asked me why I didn't come to them earlier. I told her the truth: because they'd never believed me before. Because they'd spent my entire life defending Nathan and hoping I would just get better. I told them this wasn't about being bitter or jealous. It was about finally seeing clearly and choosing not to stay silent anymore. I gave them a choice. They could talk to Nathan before the ceremony, confront him in private and keep it quiet, or they could let the truth come out another way. They said they needed time. I told them they had until 2 p.m. the next day. The next morning, I woke early, packed a small bag for the interview, and drove to a small cafe just outside the city. I brought my laptop and logged into a private scheduler I had set up the week before. At exactly 2 p.m., the system would send 3 separate emails, each with their respective packets attached, to the people who needed to see them. I turned off the Wi-Fi, drank my coffee, and waited. At 1:57, I turned it back on. At 2 p.m., the emails sent. By 2:04, my phone buzzed. Isabella. Text message: "What is this?" Then my mother. Then Malcolm. Then a number I didn't recognize, likely one of the clients. I didn't respond. I sat quietly and watched as the notifications rolled in. One after another. At 2:17, Isabella went live on her social media page. I didn't watch it immediately, but I saw the comments. The stunned faces in the background. Nathan trying to grab the phone. Malcolm pushing him back. Someone posted a photo of the award plaque lying on the ground. Another guest tweeted, while that escalated quickly. By 2:30, Nathan had called me 4 times. My inbox was overflowing. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry. I felt still. Clear-headed. I closed my laptop, paid for my coffee, and walked out into the bright spring afternoon. I didn't go home right away. After leaving the cafe, I checked into a modest motel in a town no one in my family had any reason to visit. I didn't sleep much that night. I just lay in bed, watching the glow of my phone as messages poured in. By midnight, I had over 60 texts and 40 missed calls. Some were from my mother, most from Nathan, and a few from names I didn't recognize, probably clients or colleagues. I silenced the phone and let the world keep spinning without me. At 3 a.m., I sat in the dark and listened to a voicemail from Nathan. He was quiet at first, breathing heavily. Then came the frustration, the panic, the disbelief. He asked if I was trying to ruin him, if I understood what I'd done. The message ended abruptly, a long silence, and then what sounded like him breaking down. I didn't feel joy or revenge. I felt hollow. The next morning, I checked back in online. A local news blog had picked up the story, something about a well-respected investment advisor now under scrutiny. There were no names, but the comments section made the connection. People knew. One of his clients, a woman in her 70s, had contacted authorities almost immediately after receiving the email. Apparently, Nathan had already been under quiet investigation. My documentation was the final piece. He was arrested later that evening, charged with fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. He made bail quickly, but the damage was done. His firm froze his access. His business partner, Malcolm, released a statement saying they were cooperating fully with investigators. By 10 a.m., my mother called again. This time, I answered. She didn't start with accusations. Just a tired, broken-sounding voice asking where I was. She asked if I was safe. I told her I was. She asked, "Why would you do this to the family?" And I said, "Why did the family never do anything when it was happening to me?" Silence. I wasn't trying to destroy anything, I added. I just told the truth. The parts no one else wanted to see. She didn't respond, and after a moment, I said I'd be home later that day. We'd talk in person. The drive back felt long. My mind drifted between memories and possibilities. Would I be welcomed? Blamed? Would Nathan be there? When I pulled into the driveway, my father was sitting on the porch, elbows on his knees, staring into the street. He didn't wave, didn't move. Just nodded as I walked past him into the house. Inside, my mother was at the kitchen table, surrounded by tissues and open letters. She looked at me like she didn't know whether to hug me or scold me. Maybe both. We didn't speak for a while. I sat across from her and waited. Finally, she asked how long I'd known. I told her about the emails, the transfers, the affair, the pressure he'd been under. Everything. She kept shaking her head. He's always been the strong one. Always had the answers. I didn't say anything to that. He said he could fix it, she whispered. That he just needed more time. I leaned forward. That's what he always says. And no one ever questions him, because you're all afraid of the truth. Tears welled in her eyes again, but I didn't look away. Dad came in and stood behind her. He used our savings, he said quietly. Told us it was a temporary investment plan. Said we'd see it grow within 6 months. You didn't ask for paperwork? I asked. No, he admitted. We trusted him. That's what it came down to, trust. Years of it, given freely to the son who looked successful, while the one who had stumbled was watched like he might fall again at any moment. Nathan showed up later that evening. He looked exhausted. His usually neat hair was unkempt, his tie was undone, and his voice cracked as he spoke. He didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice. He said he didn't plan for any of it to spiral this way. That it started small, one shortcut, then another. He said he felt like everyone expected him to keep succeeding, and he didn't know how to stop without disappointing them. I didn't say much. I let him talk. When he finally looked at me, I asked one question. Do you remember what you said at the anniversary party? He paused. Nodded slowly. Yeah. I nodded too. That was the last time I let you laugh at my expense. He didn't apologize, not directly. But he asked what I wanted. I want you to be held accountable, I said. The same way I was, when I failed. Except this time, you actually broke the law. He looked down, didn't argue. I left the room after that. A few days passed. The story spread. Isabella filed for temporary custody of their kids and removed Nathan from all their shared social media accounts. Her posts shifted from glowing praise to quiet reflection. Then, one evening, I got a text from her. "Thank you. I needed to know." That was it. And it was enough. Eventually, I packed a bag and left the basement. Not out of spite, I just needed air. Space. A break from the house, from the weight of everything. My cousin offered me his guest room. I accepted. It was the first time in years someone offered me help without a condition attached. Nathan hasn't contacted me since. I imagine he's trying to salvage what's left of his career. The firm has placed him on indefinite leave. The investigation is ongoing. My parents are still quiet. They call occasionally. My mother sent me a few links to therapy resources. I haven't responded yet. I don't know if I will. But here's what I do know. I'm not the failure they thought I was. I'm not the one who wrecked everything. I'm the one who told the truth. It doesn't feel like victory. Not exactly. But it feels like clarity. Like space I didn't have before. Like maybe I can finally start building something for myself, not to prove anything to them, but because I want to. The disappointment is gone. He served his time. I don't know who I'll be next. But I'm ready to find out. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.